College football is over, the NFL is winding down, and as we turn our attention to the ice and hardwood until Sunday, January 22nd, we are slashing NBA, college basketball, and NHL season passes from $4.59 all the way down to $2.99 with no coupon needed. This special price locks in your favorite handicappers in the sport of your choice through the championship for pennies on the dollar versus buying daily packages. And since the price will remain $2.99 through midnight on January 22nd, the earlier you buy, the more days you get included at no additional cost. How much are you saving? College basketball comes to just $3.55 per day through March Madness, and the NBA and NHL discounts come out to just under $60 per month to lock in your favorite handicapper through the finals or Stanley Cup. Go to your favorite handicappers page at WagerTalk and or Sports Memo and lock in your sports through the championship for only $2.99 each. If you want to combine handicappers or multiple sports, email us and we can work out an even more significant discount for you.
Never in doubt, it is Wager Talk Today on Friday, January the 20th, and I am Steve Merrill filling in one final time for the Prez. Teddy Covers, he is en route. I have confirmation he boarded the airplane. He is heading back to North America, so get ready. The Prez will return on Monday, but we're going to do one more show here on Friday before we hit the weekend. Once again, Steve Merrill filling in for the Prez, and that is my co-host Teddy Covers alongside for the ride. And this is a big Friday, Teddy. We got basketball as always, but just a day away from the NFL playoffs. What we got on today's show?
Sure, Football Friday here on Wager Talk Today. We have a pair of guests coming in today. Eric Pauly is going to join us. He's going to talk props for the Bengals and the Bills. He's going to talk props for the Jaguars and the Chiefs. My big game breakdown, little NBA for tonight. The New Orleans Pelicans against the Orlando Magic. Ralph Michaels is going to join us as well. He's got a chart. We're going to talk about NFL divisional round. Home teams with rest, the teams that got the bye. Ralph's going to tell us if that's a good thing or a bad thing for this round. Last year was not good. Both NFL teams that got the bye, the number one seeds lost straight up and against the spread. Is that a short-term trend or is that a long-term thing? Ralph will tell us. He's also going to break down Utah and Brooklyn in the NBA and in college hoops. We're going to talk a little action, the Mid-American Conference, or the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, I should say, as opposed to the Mid-American Conference, the MAC versus the MAC. He's going to talk some Marist versus St. Peter's Friday night college hoops. So a loaded edition of Wager Talk Today. Let's get right into it.
Yeah, the MAC with the double A, I guess Metro Atlantic, correct? Call it the Metro.
Yeah.
I don't think
Metro
they call it the
Atlantic
Metro anymore,
Athletic
Teddy.
Conference. Yeah, as opposed to the Mid-American Conference, the other MAC, yeah.
Yeah, I used to always call it the Metro. You don't hear that much anymore, but I like Metro. It's a good sound, too. But let's bring on Eric Pauly. And hey, don't forget, WagerTalk.com, best bets every day, all these numerous cappers. But don't forget about SportsMemo.com as well. And Eric, you do a great job. You're so good on Tuesday that we brought you back 3 days later on Friday here to talk more football because the viewers want some props. You gave us some breakdowns on the games Tuesday. Give us some props. What do you want to look at here for this weekend's action?
Yes, well, like you just mentioned, first of all, thank you guys for having me back. I really enjoyed it on Tuesday and looking forward to being here today as well. I'm going with two props for the show today. I'm starting off with a prop in the Kansas City Chiefs Jacksonville Jaguars game. I'm going Travis Etienne, running back for the Jaguars, over 19.5 receiving yards. I got that at minus 110 earlier this week. This is a number for Etienne when the first time they played the Chiefs this season back in November, he hit this number and it was only 16.5 receiving yards. He ended with 28, which actually came on one big play. Because Etienne, he's only getting around like 2.5, 3 targets out of the backfield per game. But this is a matchup where I think Etienne is actually in a situation to really go over this number and not just by a couple of yards, by a bunch of yards. The Chiefs have one of the worst pass defenses against running backs in the National Football League. And that's because Steve Spagnuolo, their defensive coordinator, runs a very aggressive scheme on defense. I expect that the Kansas City Chiefs are going to get out big early in this game. You know, there are 9-point favorites at home. And while I'm very excited to hear what Ralph says about the home team getting that bye and having that rest, how that trend shakes out, but I have reason to believe that the Chiefs, the way that this matchup is going to go, are going to get out to an early lead, meaning that their pass rushers on defense are going to do their best to get after Trevor Lawrence, who they sacked 5 times in that first matchup, leaving Etienne the ability to hit out of the backfield on a screen pass or just on a little swing route. And we know he has the speed to get through and burst and get great yards after the catch. he is by far the number one option on this offense in that backfield. And again, situationally, based on how the Chiefs are going to play this game and based on his skill set, 19.5 yards still seems too low. I'm taking the over on his receiving prop on Saturday afternoon.
So the one thing that stands out when it comes to Etienne is that he's not getting a ton of targets. 45 targets for the season, one last week. It's not like they've been looking at him as an essential part of the game plan in the passing game. Now, KC, when you think about how they're going to get after Trevor Lawrence, you can anticipate a little bit more pressure up the middle than they've had, considering how well KC's been able to blow up the line of scrimmage against opposing offensive lines. And that may be the one part of the Chiefs that's underrated right now is that pass rush. Is this bet on Etienne a scenario where you're thinking that Lawrence is going to be under fire and he's going to have to dump off passes? Or is this a situation where you think they're going to target a guy that hasn't really been targeted that much this season?
Yeah, no, definitely the former. I think the way that the game plan is going to go is the Chiefs are going to get out early. They're going to unleash their pass rushers, Chris Jones up the middle, rookie George Karafalakis at the edge, and of course Frank Clark, leaving when they're going to force Lawrence into those quick passing situations and set up those kind of screen passes for Etienne. So I don't think they're all of a sudden going to just be funneling passes toward Etienne. However, I do think it will take just one good play, have deceptive screen pass, allowing that rush to get in, letting Etienne kind of sneak out, and we know he has the speed to break off 20 yards in one single reception. He did that against the Chiefs the first time. So definitely the former there. I don't all of a sudden believe that Etienne is going to just be funneling these passes. I think it simply could be one or two deceptive kind of screen passes, which we've seen him get around 2.5, 3 targets a game into receptions that will lead to this number. Not, again, going to be just a funnel of passes toward him.
Now, Steve, I didn't text you, but I want to ask him. I want to ask Eric a second follow on this because I'm not a guy that is wired for props. You know, I don't. I hear people talking about them. I bet them sometimes, but I'm not every week scouring for props. Every time someone comes on the show and talks props, always over. Doesn't matter what player, whether it's a yes touchdown. It doesn't seem like anyone ever targets unders on these. Do you target unders? And how come no one targets unders in the props? And when we know that the books are going to get 95% action on the over, isn't there some value on some of these unders, on some of these no's?
That is an absolutely great point, and there certainly is value on some of these unders. Get to the postseason, the lines are a lot more efficient, and also there's a lot more public money coming in, especially when there are only a finite couple of games. There's only 4 games on the slate this week. So a strategy I would utilize if you are looking to bet an under, especially in the playoffs or on a day like Thanksgiving, Christmas, where there's only a few games on that slate, primetime matchup, you should wait until kind of right before the game kicks off to go for the under, because a lot of the public money on the players like the Christian Kirks, the Etiennes, the Travis Kelce's, the big name players are going to get bet up by the public, where there is going to be value on the under closer to kickoff rather than at open. So just something to consider when looking to bet those props, again, in these big time, prime time situations is if you like the over, you probably want to get in at the open. If you like the under, you maybe could wait a little bit closer to kickoff to take that bet. But there's certainly merit in that 100%, Teddy.
Yeah, and so another great reason also to have a direct subscription, whether it be WagerTalk.com for Teddy or myself, or Eric Pauly over at SportsMemo.com, because the minute the play is released, when you're a direct subscriber, you get the instant update, the email, you get the alert, and like Eric said, most of the time these lines are going to go higher because, as Teddy said too, it does seem like there's a lot of overaction. What I was going to say earlier, it's funny you said that, Teddy. I was going to say the one great thing about overs in games themselves, right? You can win by the third quarter, and what I love about these prop overs is that one big pass play here, right? If he breaks a tackle, 19, 20 yards, you can get that on one reception. You're always alive even till the last play of the game. So I think that's another reason, Teddy, why we see some over bets.
Sure, but the scary thing is you can get over and then have a negative play and lose that. You're like, oh, yeah, we got there. And then the next play, they throw something behind the line of scrimmage. He loses 5 yards. Oops. We were there.
True.
But when a full game goes over the total, it can't get back under. When a player prop goes over the total, sometimes it can and does go back under when they have a negative play and it's around the number. So that's just one of those, little, it doesn't happen a lot, but it does happen sometimes.
No, it's an excellent point, and obviously with the running backs, that's more of a concern, right? A receiver, it's very unlikely probably that a receiver would go negative, but a running back, yeah, that's a good point. Hadn't thought about that. It ain't over till it's over, as the great Yogi Berra would say. It's deja vu all over again. We got Eric Pauly on for a second time this week on Wager Talk Today. Eric, let's talk about another football prop. I want to talk Joe Burrow. They've basically been unbeatable the last couple of years with him. Teddy, you might have the updated record. I know a few weeks ago, I think games he'd started the Bengals were like 21-3 ATS going into about a month ago. Basically, they covered almost every game. And keep in mind, 2 of the losses were early this season, and he did not play this summer. He was all out this summer recovering from surgery, did not play the preseason. They started slow, but they've been on a roll since. Eric, give me a Joe Burrow prop for that Bengals-Bills game on Sunday.
Yeah, so I'm taking a long shot type of bet that I think is certainly worth a 0.25 or 0.5 unit wager. That's Joe Burrow to find the end zone, anytime touchdown score, plus 650. I saw it at early. And I've actually seen a couple of books have it as low as like plus 250. So make sure you are line shopping to get the best number available when you are taking any of these prop bets or even sides and totals. But what we know about Joe Burrow is he is not afraid to run and take hits. The guy will dive for the pylon or for a first down during the preseason and the regular season, obviously he's going to do something like that in the postseason. Now that what we discussed on Tuesday, Teddy, that the Bengals offensive line is now banged up, they'll have 3 replacement players across that offensive line. Joe Burrow, over the course of his career, has gotten so much better in the quick passing game with his pocket presence and his ability to move out of the pocket. Now, in the postseason, of course, the stakes are as high as they possibly could be. And now considering that Buffalo does have a pretty solid defensive line that could certainly create some pressure, we know that Joe Burrow is not going to be afraid to run outside of the pocket and dive for a pylon if need be. He's not the kind of guy who needs to score a touchdown solely at the 1 yard line, maybe get lucky on a QB kind of sneak. He's athletic enough to run from 10, 15 yards out. He had 6 touchdowns in 17 games played so far this season, including last week against the Ravens. And I think that this Bengals team is still going to be a little bit, I don't want to say pissed off because of what happened in Cincinnati, because obviously that was a crazy, unprecedented circumstance. But they lost the ability to win the 1 seed. Like, this game could have been in Cincinnati, and they actually could have been hosting Jacksonville, not even playing Buffalo yet. So based on, again, how that game was going, I think the Bengals have a bigger chip on their shoulder here. We know Joe Burrow is not afraid of taking a big hit. He is that kind of pocket passer who can move out of the pocket. Weaker offensive line now. I think all of those kind of components are worth a sprinkle on Joe Burrow to find the end zone. And this could happen rushing, or if they decide to run like a trick play and throw it to him and he catches in the end zone, that'll hit too. Obviously not as likely, but I like Burrow finding the end zone by himself this weekend.
So, as you mentioned, Burrow had 5 regular season rushing touchdowns and 1 last week. Mm-hmm. I believe all of them came on QB sneaks. At least most of them came on QB sneaks. In a scenario where Cincinnati might be missing, we don't know yet, but they could be missing 3 starting offensive linemen. Are they going to sneak Burrow? I mean, is that the call here when they're at the goal line? Because I would think that when you have an offensive line that's a mess, which Cincy's may be on Sunday, that's going to probably limit the number of quarterback sneaks you're going to get, because you don't want your QB to take more hits than he's already taking behind a banged up offensive line. So to make a short question long, does the Cincy OL issues this week affect your thought process on this game?
No, I actually think it drives me more toward this number. For starters, if you have a worse offensive line and you are 1-2 yards out of the goal line, you're not going to want Joe Burrow to turn around and hand the ball off, anticipating your O-line is going to block for that play. You're better off going right either under the center or above the center for that. So actually, I'm going to go with no there. And also, because of how the Buffalo Bills do their defensive line rotations, they have a lot of quality guys who are going to have fresh legs coming after Burrow. He is just, again, improved so much in his pocket presence, his quick passing game, his ability to step up, and he's always been a guy who can get out of the pocket and create things. So looking at like a matchup he had against the Chiefs back in December, obviously a huge game, he ran 11 times for 46 yards and hit pay dirt in that game. So while, again, the offensive line is the question, I am a big believer in his ability to escape. And again, in the postseason is the time where people will put their bodies on the line. He's already puts his body on the line for a regular season game. I find it hard to believe he will not. Again, if the play breaks down, he's close enough in that red zone, go for that end zone and dive to that pylon. And plus 650 is just a little too juicy for me. I'm playing that.
So here's the bad news for you, Eric. The bad news is that we only have 2 guests today, so I get multiple follow-up questions when I need them. So that means we've got a little bit of extra time to talk about this. The good news is that this isn't a question where I'm ripping on the Burrow. This is a question about how this prop correlates with side and total. It sounds to me, if you think Burrow's going to score, that means you think Cincy's going to score. That means you're thinking maybe the Bengals are live, maybe the over. Am I reading way too much into what you're looking at in this prop? But it sounds like you're leaning Cincy and over. Is that the way you look?
We talked about Cincy +5 on Tuesday, Teddy. So I'm officially on Cincinnati. It's a play I have up for my clients on Sports Memo. Got that 5.5 for the Bengals. So yes, I do expect the Bengals to be in this game. And yes, the Buffalo Bills defense has not been great so far over the last couple of weeks. Look, they just let up 31 points to Skylar Thompson in Miami, even though they outgained them. And that was kind of like Buffalo's mantra this season. They let up a ton of yards. The Bengals were rolling on offense in that Week 17 matchup on Monday night before everything broke down. So yeah, I do like points in this game, and I do like the Bengals.
Yeah, we've talked about it a few times this week, but the in-game line when Cincinnati was up 7-3 mid-first quarter with the ball was Cincinnati -3 to 3.5. They had about a 65% chance at that point to win that game straight up after being the dog at kickoff, and the total, of course, was around 56.5, up from 49, 50, 51 by kickoff. This is a little bit of a lower total, and we have seen the money coming on Buffalo. I think a lot of that has to do with the offensive line injuries, and I talked about this in my Fade the Public video, which is live right now on WagerTalk TV. Cincinnati is a public dog this week, yet the line has gone from 4 to 5.5. I don't want to say it's necessarily a sharp square divide. I think of some of that's injury information built in, but we'll keep an eye on that and see where it goes. Eric, you do a lot of sports work at sportsmemo.com, of course, but you also do a lot of TV work with Sports Memo TV. Tell the viewers where they can check you out today on some more shows and also what you got going on at sportsmemo.com.
Yeah, so the show run is over for the week, but I'll be back next week on the First Family Show, as well as hopefully the playoff football forecast show for championship weekend. Also, the Bettors Almanac podcast, sponsored by Sports Memo and WagerTalk, of course. That goes live every Tuesday morning, breaking down the entire slate, some futures as well. So definitely make sure to check that out on Sports Memo podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And on my page right now, I have my $2 Tuesday pick still up from this past Tuesday. It is on another one of the games I have not discussed. I'm leaning toward a side there very heavily. That is up. And also, like I said, I have the Bengals as a 2% client play already up. I do know that they are public dogs, Steve, but looking at kind of the playoff picture, looking at these hyper-efficient markets, I am one to, of course, respect the betting market, but this is a kind of a situation where you got to go with your gut. And so on my page, you'll find my $2 Tuesday pick up ready to go. And I also have the Bengals +5.5 locked and loaded.
And once again, if you missed Eric on Tuesday, check out that replay here as he did talk some NFL football for that in-depth Bengals-Bills analysis right here on Wager Talk Today. And check out those other shows he does on Sports Memo TV. We forget to mention Sports Memo TV, Teddy, but that's also a great channel, a great resource for the bettors. And, of course, everything is archived 24/7. If you missed the live version, shame on you, but you can watch the replay anytime, day or night. And download the app as well, Wager Talk TV app, for your favorite mobile device. That's Eric Pauly, sportsmemo.com. Teddy, we talked some NFL. Let's keep with the pro theme here and talk a little NBA. We always do a What Bettors Learn segment. Give me some NBA talk.
So, yeah, we got to talk about the Brooklyn Nets right now. The Nets last year, when Kevin Durant got hurt, they went 5-16 in the 21 games that he missed during his extended absence. They went from second in the Eastern Conference to eighth in the Eastern Conference during that span. This year, Kevin Durant has just gotten hurt. And Brooklyn was the hottest team in the NBA before he got hurt. One of the hottest teams in the NBA before he got hurt. Now they've lost 4 straight without him. And last night's loss in Phoenix was a no-show. I mean, it was really they finally made a rally late in the fourth quarter to make things interesting, but there wasn't energy from Brooklyn at the tip-off yesterday. There wasn't defense from Brooklyn at tip-off yesterday, and they played 3 quarters of lousy basketball. Now, some of the quotes coming out of Brooklyn are pretty good. Nick Claxton talking about the difference between this year and last year. Well, last year, it was kind of a toxic environment. We didn't know if anyone wants to be there. We didn't be here at the time. Talking obviously about James Harden and his desire to get out of Brooklyn. This year, there's no divide between everyone that's out there. We're going to figure it out. We just got to figure out how to play with each other without having KD out there in the court. It's different lineups, but we'll figure it out. Kyrie came back last night. I'm consistently in the lineup. We don't have a halfway in anyone in the locker room. There's a primary focus on the big picture here. It was all glory last week when we were winning games every game. Now we're answering questions about potentially struggling. I don't think we're going to struggle without Kevin Durant now. That's not my belief. I know a lot of guys in the locker room don't believe that. This isn't last year at all. The comparisons have got to stop. And then, of course, they get blown out in Phoenix. Right now, Brooklyn's a one-way team. I took a shot with them last night. I thought it was the optimal spot against the optimal opponent, and it was a no-show game for the Nets. And when I think it's the optimal spot against the optimal opponent and the team doesn't show, that's a big red flag, not a little red flag. Nets right now, a one-way team for me. We'll see what Ralph Michaels thinks about them in a few minutes when he comes on the show. Brooklyn, Utah, one of the games he's going to be talking about on WagerTalk today. So I don't know if that's something I learned, but we're concerned about Brooklyn right now, Steve. What about you?
No, I think it's a good point to bring up because the Nets have basically been unstoppable offensively. And you look at that extended winning streak that finally ended on January 4th. The two games before that they'd won, they'd shot 60 and 62% the last two games of December, the first game of January. I mean, that's insane, Teddy. 46% and 43%. They've now shot 45 or less in 3 of their last 4 games. They did shoot 52 last night, but yeah, noticeable drop off, obviously, and not having Durant's probably not going to help.
And it speaks to how freaking good Kevin Durant is.
Yeah, no joke.
I mean, a lot of times a team loses a star, and the rest of the team is capable of filling that void. And we see it happen all the time. The team that lost their star is now the undervalued commodity in the betting marketplace, and they're playing just fine. We've seen it dozens of times. I can list, whether Morant last year for Memphis is the classic example when they went 21-3 ATS when he was gone. But you oftentimes see teams play good basketball without a star. And the Nets without Durant, haven't seen any of it. Didn't see any of it last year, didn't see any of it this year. Durant is a pretty good player still at this stage of his career. And when you think, he reminds me in a sense of Booker for Phoenix, right? Devin Booker. When Booker got hurt, the Suns stopped winning. He was the one guy, didn't matter what defense you throw at him. Booker hits shots down the stretch and he wins games. Kevin Durant's kind of like that. He hits shots down the stretch and he wins game. Without him, Brooklyn is missing something significant.
Yeah, and I want to get the viewers with the live chats. We have so many great viewers. We have over 260 watching right now. Since we have a little extra time, viewers, chime in with any questions you have, Teddy, and I'll get to them at the end of the show. But don't give the answer, Teddy. You might know this, so I'm not going to ask you. But viewers, who's the best point spread team in the NBA the last 2 years combined? I kind of had a feeling, and I just looked it up. But chime in the chat here in the next 5 minutes or so. We'll give you the answer. You don't know?
I said, without looking, I'm sure I know. I'm 100% sure I'm right.
Oh, you said you do know. Okay. Yeah. I thought you probably would. That's why I didn't want to ask you, but I wanted to see if the viewers know. Viewers, don't look it up. You can cheat and look it up. Good for you. Chime in without looking, see if you get it right. Let's bring on Ralph Michaels. He's the human database, the pin, stat daddy. Ralph Michaels might know offhand. Ralph, I'm not going to ask you to give the answer, but do you think you know the best NBA ATS team the last 2 seasons, part of this year and all of last year?
Oh, is it some team that is on an 8-1 run now, upsetting every foe they play? Could be.
I'm going to give it away. Spoiler alert.
And they're still covering.
Yeah, that is the correct answer. But the viewers still might not know. Well, I'll tell you what.
I did look it up, and I'm going to ask you two to guess who the worst ATS team is. I think you're going to have one good guess over the last 2 years.
I'm not going to look. I've got the best in front of me, so I won't cheat. Okay, I've got one in my head. Teddy, throw out your answer. I might be wrong. I'll look it up.
Yeah, I mean, my gut, and I don't know offhand. I know the best, but I don't know the word. I'm assuming it's the Lakers. It's got to be.
That's exactly what I was going to say, Teddy.
Lakers are actually 44% going 55 and 70. The Rockets and Wizards are both 41.8% the last 2 years, 51 and 71 ATS.
Yeah, and the best spread team, we've given the viewers a little bit of time here. The best spread team is the Oklahoma City Thunder, and as Ralph said, they've been red hot. But the reason I bring them up, they're the best this year, Ralph, but they were second best last year behind Memphis, who played a lot of games without their quote-unquote superstar. And Teddy, I thought of Morant when you're talking about how much weaker, the Suns or the Nets are. Grizzlies were actually, if I'm not mistaken, Ralph, they are actually better last year straight up record without Morant, which was insane. And Memphis was the best team last year. But OKC's been the best team the last 2 years, a losing team overall for the most part. And then you mentioned a team like the Rockets, a terrible team. They've been the worst. So it's funny how that can work. It's normally not the case.
Yeah, and that's when there's value. We're going to talk about that on one team to look ahead in college hoops on Saturday. But when you get those powerful ATS teams that have a losing record or a 500 record, you don't quite get the same Vegas push as a team that wins 10 straight and covers 10 straight. So sneaky value, we all look for it. When you have a losing team with a positive ATS record, take it to the bank, guys.
And it's the beauty of a team like Oklahoma City. Gilgeous-Alexander is becoming a superstar, but if your casual NBA fan has no idea who Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is. They have no star, no big stars on that team. You don't see him on TV. All right, OKC doesn't get the national TV games. So when you have a team that doesn't have the star and doesn't have the TV games, their value holds. It holds and holds and holds and holds. Boston goes on. You talked about when a team wins 10 straight, everyone's talking about it. Not when a team covers 10 straight. It's a whole different scenario.
Ralph, I want to ask you something real quick as we keep this theme before we move over to the NFL. So I'm looking at just some general numbers. These might not be exact with your database, but last year, Oklahoma City had the second best spread record. Okay, they were behind Memphis, as we talked about, percentage-wise, 61.5%. Memphis covered by 3.2 points per game, which was the best in the league. Oklahoma City, 0.2, which was only 13th. So they're basically dead even, yet they went 48-30 roughly with 4 pushes. I know when you do your research and when I do mine, you want to see a spread covering margin, right? Otherwise, somewhat it's just random variance. What do you make of that? I mean, OKC last year, you could make an argument should have regressed this year, as they should never have been 48-30, covering by 0.2 a game. Now, all of a sudden this year, they have the best spread record, and they're covering by 4.8. They've actually gotten better. Your thoughts on that?
Well, the thoughts are this. When I look at their ATS margins, the reason it's so close is this. They went through a stretch, I'm trying to add it up now, where they lost 20-some games by 20 or more points. So when you're losing that many blowout games and then you're winning, the biggest win, they only had 5 double-digit wins. So when you are playing bad and you're getting blown out, and when you're winning, you still might be losing and covering, you're never going to get the type of margin for that type of team we're looking at.
Good point.
Where Memphis was a favorite. I'm looking at OKC last year. Their average line was plus 8.3. When I look at the Grizzlies, their average line was minus 2.1. So that in a nutshell is my explanation. Not sure if you guys agree or not.
That's an excellent point, Teddy. I think that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the key is the margin of defeat. When Oklahoma City lost last year, they let go of the rope. They had a good handful of bad losses where they got blown off the court. And when you're losing games by big margins, it's going to affect. When you're losing some of the games that you do lose by big margin, it's going to affect your overall data set for the season. And that's why the number was as low as it was, despite their strong ATS record. When they lost, OKC lost big. That hasn't been happening on nearly as regular a basis this season.
Yeah, and Ralph, let's transition over to the NFL. And that's an excellent point, by the way. I think you have to look at maybe spread when you cover your spread margin cover would have been a better way to look at OKC last year for that reason. So yeah, great answer. I'm glad I asked you that because I wasn't thinking that way, but that's exactly what happened. NFL playoffs, we talked about it earlier this week. I think actually yesterday with Brian Power about how the 2 number 1 seeds in this new format went down outright last season. And we talk about research here. And for the new viewers out there, whether you're researching the financial markets, the sports betting markets, anything, sample size means something. And when it's 2 games, it's a very limited sample size, but it does catch your attention. But Ralph, one thing Teddy and I talked about yesterday was that those 2 teams, Packers-Titans, finished 7th and 12th overall in the Sagregan power ratings. Neither one made the playoffs this year. Can maybe make the case in hindsight they were phony number 1s. I don't know if the Eagles and Chiefs are phony or not. But tell us about number 1 seeds. Back when we all started a couple decades ago, it was a pretty powerful angle having that bye, but it hasn't worked quite as well in recent years.
Yeah, I would say almost shocking. Let's take a look and remember this. Up until 2 years ago, we had two teams, the 1 and 2 teams had buys. So this data is for 4 teams a year, with the exception now of the current process with the new expanded playoffs, where only the 1 seed gets the bye. So when you pull up and you look at divisional teams off a bye, you go to a bar, I'm going to guess 9 out of 9 people say, wow, it's an advantage to be at home off a bye and rested and watch your opponent play a playoff game. Well, this is only involving the team at home off a bye. If you look back since 2001, if you're a double-digit favorite, you've gone 7-1 against the spread. Doesn't apply. There's only been 3 home dogs since 2001 in the divisional round that had a bye. They went 2-1 ATS. But take a look at the middle. When you are a pick or a single-digit favorite with the bye, yes, you've gone 31-19 straight up, but you've gone 18, 31-1, 36.7%. And if you look on the very last line, just an FYI, when a home team has had a bye, those games have gone over the total since 2010, 61.4% of the time.
So what this chart is clearly showing that you're not going to hear on any mainstream network is that from a point spread perspective, single-digit favorites off a bye are money losers, consistent money losers in the NFL postseason. Ralph, do you blindly bet against these? I mean, is this trend strong enough to say I'm betting the Jags and the Giants this week and let the chips fall where they may, or is it not quite that strong?
No, again, we're talking years and differences, and I think I only showed this for this reason. Don't overemphasize home playoff and don't overemphasize the bye. So it's going to make me think about it, Teddy. But in fact, I am leaning to teasing, or a money line parlay. So I actually don't like either dog in that role. But again, information to be shared, and take from it what you wish.
So last week I was in that spot with, where we had a great trend that pointed towards Miami, where you take the stagger and strong strength of schedule, and it says you got to take Miami with the third string quarterback. And I'm like, I can't take Miami with the third string quarterback. And I didn't. And in the first quarter, I was very glad I didn't take Miami with the third string quarterback. And by the fourth quarter, I was not as glad that I didn't take Miami with the third string QB. Aren't there some times here where it's just like, look, this is what the data shows. This is a 60+% play over a significant sample size. It went 2-0 last year. Shouldn't we just be betting these?
Well, again, when it gets to the NBA, I am much more apt to play an NBA system blindly or an NFL regular season system blindly. In the playoffs, it's unique, the home field edges, the situations you played last week. Again, I'm normally one that says, wow, it's 63%, but I just can't get there playing them blindly. So in a regular setting where I have more sample size over multiple years, I would play it. In this case, you're talking 4 games a year or 2 games a year, and the ebb and flow of the season is not going to get me to that point.
Now, one last question on the NFL before we shift over to hoops. I know you have a couple of basketball games you want to talk about, one in the NBA and one in college for tonight. But that over trend with these teams, and again, it's not crazy, 27-17 long term. Doesn't look like there are any weather issues this weekend in the NFL, which stands out considering what we've seen in recent weeks. This week doesn't look like there are any. Do we want to play these 2 games over the total? Is this something that we're looking at for this week? Would we do it blindly based off of this? Or is, again, you need more rationale than just a database to get?
Well, I mean, I do like the overs. So, yes, I mean, in this case, but that's because I liked them, not because of this trend. The trend just helped make it stronger. I mean, you look at the scoring in last week's playoffs, and, we've seen it used to be, the Ravens and defense get you to the playoffs, or offense now gets you to the playoffs, and then the team that plays the best defense is likely to get to the Super Bowl. So, I do like the overs, but again, not based on the database. I like the over, look at the database info. It makes the play stronger in my mind.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind, as I'm sure you'll back up, Ralph. I mean, you look, this says since 2006. I don't know if you have the numbers in front of you offhand, but I know when I started in 1996, those bye teams are pretty strong plays for a decade or so. So, things do change. And that's another reason I think you got to be careful of just blindly playing these angles. I know, Ralph, you use it as a filter. The fade the public information. I always say the public's not always wrong, right? I give out the public dogs or the public favorites. I use it as a filter. It's a factor, part of the handicapping process. That maybe, if you're borderline on a game, you've got a situation back in it that might make you pull the trigger. If it's the other way around, you might pass for that reason. So all these tech and trends and stuff, use them as filters, factors, part of the handicapping process. Ralph, you do a great job with basketball too. Yeah.
Steve, in 2001, 2002, 2003, 2004, that 5-year record of the rested home teams, 3-1, 3-1, 3-1, 2-2, 1-3. So 4 out of the 5 years early in the 2000s, they were. But, since that time, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 years. There hasn't been a 4-0. There's only been 3 3-1s. So that's a pretty powerful to say. If you're gonna look at that point, that are you going to get a 2-0 sweep? Well, again, there used to be 4, and there were no 4-0 sweeps against the spread, and last year was the 0-2. So to never have a sweep of an ATS going back to 2001 for the home teams with a bye is amazing to me.
Yeah, and I think that gives a little more credence to the theory too. And I do like that. It gives more depth to the research. And one final note on this, in my opinion, I think what's changed is a couple things. First of all, the 80s and 90s, we had blowout factors, right? We saw that with all those Super Bowl results, and we had some top-heavy teams in both conferences. So the better teams were a lot better than the wild card teams. I think we would all agree there's a ton of parity now in the NFL. Anybody can beat anybody almost on a given weekend. And the other thing is that those are smash-mouth running offenses, defensive teams. Like you said, defense doesn't necessarily win championships anymore. Offense definitely gets you to the championship. And with these pass-happy attacks, it makes the dogs more alive, and it also makes a week off. Sometimes it can disrupt the chemistry a little bit. We've seen some changes in the college football bowl games with that theory as well, I believe. So just some things to keep in mind. You got to see if there's a sea change in the overall game itself, and I think we've seen that recently in the NFL, quote unquote, flag football, in my opinion. But that's for another topic on another discussion on another day. Let's switch over to the NBA, Ralph. We talked some NBA. Let's keep talking NBA. Teddy talked about the Nets, and I wanted to bring this up. I figured we'd wait till we talk the game with you. It's ironic that they're playing Utah tonight. I had a best bet winner on Utah the other night for my clients at WagerTalk.com on Wednesday. The Jazz were expected to be way down this year, losing their big man Gobert, etc., losing their star guard. Everyone left. They're a scrappy team, though. What are you doing with this game tonight, Utah against Brooklyn?
Well, Teddy broke it down. Now, I do have a 5% college basketball play up at WagerTalk. These are my 2 other plays in the NBA and the college game I'm going to talk about. So these are actual client releases. And I did use game 568, Utah minus the 7.5. You want to talk about hot versus cold? This is the situation. Utah was off a bench emptying win against the Clippers. 14 players played at least 3 minutes, and only 1 player played over 31 minutes, and that was 33. You look at Brooklyn, 5 straight ATS losses, 4 straight up losses in a row. And despite Teddy saying they weren't in the game, they played 5 players that topped 32 minutes, and Irving had 39. Irving sat for 1 minute, and that was it. And you look at those 4 losses that they have. We talk about margins. Brooklyn has failed to cover by 11, 14.5, 10, and 8 points in those games. And Utah takes care of business at home. They're 15-6 ATS against winning teams. They're 9-2 ATS at home against winning teams. And of course, they've covered 5 of their last 6 overall. So I did get to the bank with game 568 Utah.
Now, when we talk about Utah in this point spread range, my numbers show Utah with exactly 1 point spread cover all year, laying more than 7 points. Does that concern you here? This hasn't exactly been their role.
It's not a situation that I've looked at, but reading the Salt Lake Journal today, they are really happy with the way the team's gelling. So as Steve said, this team was supposed to be nothing. So they were never in that favorites role until they've proven they're a legitimate team that's playing well together. And, as you said, how many games have Brooklyn not had Durant, and look at what they've done with them. So again, situations overall say, yes, Utah's that type of team. I'm concerned for them to get margin. On the flip side, in this situation with Brooklyn playing no rest against a rested Utah team, I did lay it, and I have no issues with it.
Yeah, and don't forget, there's 2 altitude teams in the NBA. We use this a lot in college hoops. It's one of my favorite college basketball angles, all the different altitude schools. But we got the Jazz and the Nuggets. They qualify as altitude teams in the NBA. And as you know, Ralph, Utah's always had a very unique home court advantage for decades now in the NBA. Let's look
Steve,
college
I do have
hoops.
one thing to
Ralph
point out
Michaels
for
does
you.
Great. Yeah. What's that?
So you talked about that college situation. How about this? The Pac-12, you play your partners. So you play Colorado, you play Utah. When you play Utah and then Colorado 2 days later, the visitor team actually has a positive ATS record. When you go Colorado to Utah and play Utah on the second of 2 days, it's a negative ATS record. So not what you would think, playing Utah, Colorado in 2 days, but over the last 5 years, those Pac-12 teams have been on the plus side of 50%.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, Ralph, if that's been factored into the line also, and if maybe the schools are becoming more used to it, because you do get some literally sea-level beach schools now playing altitude schools, which is very fascinating to me. But that's why I love the research. The numbers don't lie. Ralph, one thing about college hoops, as I say, that I love about you when you're on the college basketball shows, you do your best to find, you call them like ugly 300s, whatever. I call them under the radar games. And we got some under the radar games usually on Fridays. So what's something you're looking at tonight, and maybe in the MAC, the Metro in college hoops?
Yeah, I call it the MAC. I heard you guys talking about the MAC or the Metro, but I call it the MAC. And I'm going with 884, 3% on Marist. Now, Marist is an ugly team. Again, we're picking the bottom feeders. So should they be a favorite? I actually did play it on the money line. It was minus 135 or 140. St. Peter's is horrific. They're 1-in-8 ATS on the road, and they're shooting 34.2% on the season away from home. They have a first-year head coach, and he is absolutely playing everyone. No one has averaged over 28 minutes on the season. 12 players average 8 minutes or more, and 9 players average 15 minutes or more. So there is no cohesiveness. You're trying to learn the new system. You're playing up to 5 freshmen sometimes in your top 10 guys, and they just not are very good at it. Marist head coach Dunn, he was the head coach at St. Peter's for 12 years. Well, guess what? It stings a little bit that St. Peter's took both games from him last year. Marist shooting 41% from the season, but they had the MAAC Player of the Year and the Freshman of the Week coming up the last 2 games. They've hit 53.3% and 55.1% those 2 games. And how's this for a 73% college basketball system? When a team at home between the fives is off back-to-back upset wins against a foe off a home loss. So you have Marist that just beat Canisius and, forgive me, the other team as a dog. They're at home in a competitively priced game between the fives, and St. Peter's is off a home loss, 73%, a 7-year system.
Canisius and Niagara, the back-to-back wins. And it's a system that makes a ton of sense. You're playing momentum right here. And I certainly wouldn't talk you out of a look at Marist this evening. But much like my question with the Utah Jazz, and I went and looked at their full season numbers, the Jazz are now 7-14 as favorites against the spread. They've been great as dogs. They've not been good as chalk. This is a Marist team that isn't exactly suited to the favorites role. What do they cover? They covered twice this year as chalk so far. Does that concern you at all when it comes to their struggles in this point spread range and their lack of opportunities in this point spread range? In most games, they've been underdogs.
Well, again, yeah, they've been an underdog, but they've won 7 games straight up. And when you look at a situation, this is the third worst team they're playing. So part of the reason I did use the money line, Teddy, was because as a favorite, you have to learn to win and then learn to cover. Winning 3 straight like they have, including back-to-back upsets, I'm not worried about the winning as much. They don't turn the ball over. Again, we are talking 2 of the worst 50 teams in basketball. So anytime you have that situation, yes, you're going to be concerned about winning. Current form, quotes out of Poughkeepsie is positive. And again, it's as much a fade on St. Peter's with their horrible road play than it is on Marist.
Yeah, and I think also just fading St. Peter's this year made sense because of their run last year as a 15 seed. And don't forget, last year they finished 102 in the Ken Palms. Even with that run, they were still in the 200s offensively. They were like 25th defensively, and they got hot in the tournament. They're ranked 310 right now in Ken Palm. They're just 6-11 against the spread. Not a good team. So don't let their run last season fool you. Marist is actually 297 in the Ken Palm. So like Ralph said, two teams that are not good, but Marist has been better this season. And Ralph Michaels likes Marist. Lay the short number or lay the money line minus 140. Ralph, great segment as always, covering multiple sports. Give us some more information about WagerTalk.com and what you got going on this weekend.
I'm going to share one more system for you guys, which goes tomorrow. This is Ivy specific. Since 2012, of course, the Ivy teams play Friday and Saturday. You don't take off during midweeks. You got to study. So, you play home both games or you play on the road both games. In the Ivy, when a team loses Friday at home and they play on Saturday as a home favorite, they've gone 29-14, 67%. Again, not an incredible sample size, but it does go back since 2012. So something to keep an eye on. And again, I think Teddy's going to give the thumbs up. It makes sense. You're playing back-to-back home games. You lose that first one on Friday. You're the better team as the favorite the next day. You have no rest, but the opposition has no rest and traveled. So a system that I do look at, and there are occasions when the teams are evenly matched, I do bet this one, and it does make my card on some Saturdays. But 5% available at WagerTalk. It is a college basketball play off a nice 4-0 hoop sweep yesterday. Take advantage.
What more could you want? He gives you two of his official basketball plays for Friday and gives you an angle to look at for tomorrow in the Ivy that's going 29-14. That makes a ton of sense. That is why he's the human database stat daddy, the pen, Ralph Michaels. When you have three nicknames, Teddy, you're doing something right, and Ralph Michaels is doing a lot right at WagerTalk.com. What we did right, Teddy, was with only two guests. By the way, we were the best. Andy Lang had to bump out early. We wish the best to Andy today. And we did such a great job stretching time that we're like 20 minutes behind on the big game breakdown. So no commercial. Give it to us. Big game breakdown before we head home.
Let's do it. It is time for today's big game breakdown. Let's talk some NBA for Friday night. Orlando and New Orleans. You look at the records for these two teams for the season. Orlando's 26-17, and New Orleans is 26-19. Orlando is 16-28. No surprise, right? Pelicans are favorites here, -1.5, -1.5, total 228.5. I don't think New Orleans can be favorites tonight. All right, this is a team that is crashing and burning right now. All right, they're 3-8 straight up the last 11 games. The only teams they've beaten are the real bottom feeders: Detroit, Houston. They got Washington. Washington was slumping. They're missing all their best guys. Zion's out, Brandon Ingram's out, Herb Jones may be able to get in tonight. But here's Jonas Valanciunas, their center. We've not been lucky with injuries. We're missing really important guys, missing our core. It's been tough. This isn't a bet-on team, right? This is a team I want to lay points with on the road right now. Orlando. They started 5-20 straight up. Their last 19 games, they're 11-8 straight up. 14-5 ATS. They've beaten the Raptors, the Celtics, the Warriors, the Blazers, the Clippers. They came this close to beating Denver in Denver. Jokic hit a buzzer beating 3 to win. He's playing good. You see the quotes coming out of Orlando right now? Markelle Fultz. Every day we come in, we believe we give ourselves a chance to win. Follow the game plan and believe in ourselves. These wins are helping us build more confidence. Their defense is there right now. Jamal Mosley giving positive quotes on how their defense. And 5 days off is too much. That's my biggest concern, is they come out a little bit rusty. That said, Orlando's better than New Orleans right now. They're catching points. Give me the Magic as short dogs. Here's your big game break. Back to you, Mr. Merrill.
The vice presidential address to finish the week, and AKA the big game breakdown. Very fitting way to finish off a great week of shows. And Teddy, enjoyed it. Prez will be back on Monday. By the way, we got the college basketball tip-off show in 1 hour at 2 Eastern. Also the NBA tip-off show at 4:15 Eastern for Friday. I'll be on both shows. If you want more basketball talk, I'll be happy to oblige today. Don't forget, hit subscribe and hit the bell for instant alerts when videos go live and shows go live. My NFL Fade the Public video is up early this week. We got it up yesterday on Thursday. Those that hit the bell got an instant alert. All the college basketball top 25 video for this weekend. Don't forget, hit the like button, the thumbs up, and don't forget to leave comments below. I read all of them. We reply back. We love the support here on WagerTalk TV. Teddy, enjoyed being with you. Take us home for the weekend.
Yeah, I'm not looking forward to next week.
Oh, he's getting sad already.
It was good while it lasted, Steve.
Like it's Monday morning
That's going to
already.
wrap it for the week. Yeah, exactly. That's going to wrap it for the week here for WagerTalk Today. We'll do it again each and every weekday, 9 a.m. here on the left coast. Noon for you guys back east. Between now and then, enjoy the games and best of luck with all your wagers.
College football is over, the NFL is winding down, and as we turn our attention to the ice and hardwood until Sunday, January 22nd, we are slashing NBA, college basketball, and NHL season passes from $4.59 all the way down to $2.99 with no coupon needed. This special price locks in your favorite handicappers in the sport of your choice through the championship for pennies on the dollar versus buying daily packages. And since the price will remain $2.99 through midnight on January 22nd, the earlier you buy, the more days you get included at no additional cost. How much are you saving? College basketball comes to just $3.55 per day through March Madness, and the NBA and NHL discounts come out to just under $60 per month to lock in your favorite handicapper through the finals or Stanley Cup. Go to your favorite handicappers page at WagerTalk and or Sports Memo and lock in your sports through the championship for only $2.99 each. If you want to combine handicappers or multiple sports, email us and we can